I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers stay as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state of
We're continuing on with our exploration of listener questions. And we were tackling lesson 57 today.
Sounds good.
We've got 5 lesson titles to look at. We're going to just read those verbatim. The first one is, I am not the victim of the world I see. Number 2, I have invented the world I see. Number 3, there is another way of looking at the world. 4, I could see peace instead of this. And finally, number 5, my mind is part of God's. I am very holy.
Wow.
We're tackling a question that came in about Workbook Lesson 57.
That's good.
So before we jump into that, let's actually read Lesson 57 for everyone listening along.
Sure.
Okay. I am not the victim of the world I see. How can I be the victim of a world which can be completely undone if I so choose? My chains are loosened. I can drop them off merely by desiring to do so. The prison door is open. I can leave it simply by walking out. Nothing holds me in this world. Only my wish to stay keeps me a prisoner. I would give up insane wishes and walk into the sunlight at last. And we got this really insightful question from a listener who was working with this lesson.
Yeah.
And they write, if I'm having a hard time giving up my insane wishes, does it mean I prefer to be a prisoner?
It's not really about conscious choice. We may not even be aware of these insane wishes or how they're impacting us. It's more like we've become so used to living in this prison that we've come to see it as normal. The ego offers us this false sense of security, even if it keeps us in pain.
That makes sense. But then how do we break free? Like, how do we actually give up these insane wishes and step into that sunlight, that freedom that the Course talks about?
Well, the first step is awareness. Recognizing these insane wishes, seeing how they're operating in our lives. And then it's a process of choosing differently. Choosing to align with our true nature, with the part of us that knows we're not victims, that we're not separate, that we are connected to something much greater than ourselves.
It's about recognizing that we have a choice.
Exactly. We always have a choice. And the more we practice choosing love, choosing forgiveness, choosing to see things differently, the more we weaken the bars of that prison.
So to sum it all up, the Course is saying that we're not actually victims, but we've kind of gotten used to living in this mental prison created by our ego and these so-called insane wishes.
Yes.
And the key to freedom is recognizing those patterns, having compassion for ourselves, and making a conscious choice to align with love and forgiveness instead.
Yeah, beautifully said. It's a journey, not a destination.
We're looking at lesson 32 from the workbook. Here we go. I have invented the world I see. I made up the prison in which I see myself. All I need do is recognize this, and I am free. I have deluded myself into believing it is possible to imprison the Son of God. I was bitterly mistaken in this belief, which I no longer want. The Son of God must be forever free. He is as God created him, and not what I would make of him. He's where God would have him be, and not where I thought to hold him prisoner.
Wow.
I know, right? And it kind of leads right into the question this listener sent us.
Okay, what is it?
They're asking, why doesn't God just free me from the prison, since I'm having such a hard time freeing myself?
I think to understand the answer, you have to look at one of the most important concepts in the Course. Free will.
Free will.
Yeah, the idea that God gave us this amazing gift, the power to choose. But that also means we have the power to choose things that might cause us pain, that might lead us to what feels like a prison.
So even those choices that lead to suffering, God is honoring them because they are our choices. Doesn't it kind of put all the responsibility on us, on the individual, to make the right choices?
The Course definitely leans into personal responsibility, because if we choose our way into this prison, into this experience of limitation, then the only way out is through choice as well.
So God can't just come in and force us to be free.
Exactly, because that would be taking away our free will.
I get it. So freedom is something we have to choose. We have to recognize that maybe, just maybe, we're the ones holding ourselves captive.
Yeah, we have to recognize that.
But how do we actually do that? How do we start to unlock that door?
Well, The Course gives us some tools for that. It talks a lot about the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit is like this internal guide, always there, ready to help us see things differently, to help us shift our perception.
Shift our perception.
Yeah. And another really important tool is forgiveness. Forgiving others, but also forgiving ourselves. For creating this experience, for buying into this idea that we're limited.
How does forgiving myself help me get out of a situation where it feels like I'm trapped by what someone else has done?
Right. Well, it's not about saying what they did was okay.
No, of course not.
It's more about changing how you see it. See, if you see yourself as a victim, you're giving away your power. Forgiveness helps you take that power back.
Take it back, yeah.
It lets you move out of that victim role and into a place where you can make choices, real choices.
So if we can change our perception, if we can start to see that those bars on the prison, they might be self-imposed, then we can start to experience the freedom the Course talks about.
I think so.
So to tie this back to our listener's question,
Yeah.
even though it can feel like God is keeping us trapped, the Course is saying that's not really the case. It's more like we've turned away and God is waiting patiently for us to turn back.
Yes, and part of that journey for our listener and for everyone is figuring out what those self-imposed limitations are. If the prison is something we've made up in our minds, then what thoughts, what beliefs are keeping us feeling trapped?
What a question. It's like a whole journey in itself, isn't it?
It is.
We're looking at lesson 33.
Right.
And as always, we're going to start by reading it verbatim.
Okay.
There is another way of looking at the world. Since the purpose of the world is not the one I ascribe to it, there must be another way of looking at it. I see everything upside down, and my thoughts are the opposite of truth. I see the world as a prison for God's Son. It must be then that the world is really a place where He is set free. I would look upon the world as it is and see it as a place where the Son of God finds His freedom. So freedom.
Freedom.
Well, our listener today have a question that kind of gets at that, I think.
Okay.
They write, besides forgiveness, what are some practical exercises or techniques to help me find freedom?
Yeah, so one practical exercise is, when you find yourself judging someone, just stop and ask yourself, okay, what is it about this person that's really bothering me? And then, is there something in me that I'm not wanting to look at?
Wow, that's some deep work right there.
It is, yeah. It can be challenging, but it's also very liberating.
Yeah.
Because when we can start to own our own stuff, when we can stop projecting it out onto other people, then we can start to heal those parts of ourselves and we can start to see other people more clearly. Because when we judge someone, we're essentially saying, you have power over me.
That's true.
You can make me feel bad about myself. But when we own our own stuff, we're saying, no, I'm not going to give you that power. I'm going to take responsibility for my own feeling.
So besides that, are there other exercises or techniques that we can use to kind of shift our perception and find more freedom?
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that the Course emphasizes is the importance of mindfulness. And this is really just about becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Okay.
So, instead of getting caught up in our thoughts and letting them run our lives,
Yeah.
we can just observe them. Kind of like watching clouds passing by in the sky. We don't have to engage with them. We don't have to believe them. We can just let them come and go.
So it's like creating some space
Right.
between ourselves and our thoughts.
Exactly. And that space is where freedom is found.
That makes sense.
Because when we're identified with our thoughts, we're trapped.
Yeah.
We're at the mercy of our ego's chatter. But when we can step back and observe our thoughts, we realize that we're not our thoughts.
Right.
We're something much greater than that.
We're the observer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And once we start to practice mindfulness and we start to see our thoughts more clearly, then we can start to choose different thoughts. Instead of reacting automatically to a situation with fear or anger,
Yeah.
we can pause,
Okay.
we can take a breath, and we can choose to respond with love instead.
So it's like we're retraining our minds in a way.
Exactly. We're creating new neural pathways.
Interesting.
We're literally rewiring our brains for love.
Wow, that's fascinating. So how do we make this a part of our daily lives?
So, Just like with anything else, if we want to get good at something, we have to practice it regularly. So I would say one of the most important things is to have a daily practice of studying the course.
Okay.
Whether that's reading a lesson or listening to an audio recording or meditating on a particular passage.
Right.
Just taking some time each day to connect with the teachings and to remind yourself of the truth.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day, look for opportunities to apply the principles in your everyday life.
That makes sense. So for our listener who's asking about practical exercises and techniques to find freedom,
Yeah.
it sounds like the answer is really about this inner transformation.
It's about shifting our perception of the world from seeing it as a place of fear and limitation to seeing it as a place of love and freedom.
We're looking at lesson 34.
Okay.
And we also have a great question from one of our listeners.
Sounds good.
So let's jump right into lesson 34.
All right.
It says, I could see peace instead of this. When I see the world as a place of freedom, I will realize that it reflects the laws of God instead of the rules which I made up for it to obey. I will understand that peace, not war, abides in it. And I will perceive that peace also abides in the hearts of all who share this place with me. And that leads us right into our listener's question today.
Okay.
They write, how can I be the one who made up the rules when I learned them from my family and community?
It's difficult to reconcile our own responsibility for our thoughts and beliefs when it seems like so much comes from our past.
Right.
Our upbringing, the people around us. But the Course suggests that the ego has a universal thought system that is actually based on separation and guilt and fear. And so as we grow up, we inherit this system.
So you're saying we're not actually creating our own beliefs, but instead adopting this pre-existing system.
Well, we're adopting it, and then we're using it to filter our experience.
Right.
And we call that selective perception. So, we're seeing the world through this lens of the ego's thought system.
If we believe that people can't be trusted, we're more likely to notice experiences that confirm that belief and kind of ignore any instances where people are actually trustworthy.
Yeah, that's a great example. And that just further strengthens the illusion that our beliefs are true.
Right.
But the reality is we have a choice in how we perceive the world.
So even though these beliefs might have been ingrained in us from a young age, we can still challenge them.
Yes, definitely.
But how do we know if we're just repeating what we've been taught or if we're actually thinking for ourselves?
Well, the Course makes a distinction between the ego and the true self.
Okay.
And the ego is that voice that operates from fear and separation.
Right.
And then the true self is connected to God, to love, and to wisdom.
Okay.
And the more we cultivate awareness of these two voices within us, the more we can start to choose which one we want to listen to. So if the rules that we see in the world are actually a reflection of our own internal rules, then that means we have the power to create peace and freedom by changing those internal rules.
So that means we really need to shift from relying on external authority to trusting our own inner authority.
Right.
All right, so lesson 35.
All right.
My mind is part of God's. I am very holy. As I share the peace of the world with my brothers, I begin to understand that this peace comes from deep within myself. The world I look upon has taken on the light of my forgiveness and shines forgiveness back at me. In this light, I begin to see what my illusions about myself had kept hidden. I begin to understand the holiness of all living things and their oneness with me. So this listener writes in and asks, does this lesson mean I'll gain confidence in myself? How would you respond to that?
Well, the Course makes a distinction between ego-driven confidence and the kind of self-assurance that comes from acknowledging your inherent holiness. Ego confidence, it's all about those external factors like achievements or comparisons, which, that can lead to a pretty shaky sense of self.
Right.
But true confidence that comes from recognizing your inherent worth, it's not dependent on what's happening around you.
Okay, so it sounds like the Course is saying that maybe seeking confidence directly could actually be a problem.
Yeah, in a way, because it's putting the focus on the wrong thing. Like it's more about cultivating that inner peace and self-awareness. And then, that genuine confidence, it just sort of emerges naturally as you align with your true nature.
Yeah, like if we're coming from a place of love and acceptance, that's what we're going to see around us.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So to sum it all up, I guess the question for our listener and for all of us is this: where do we think true confidence comes from? Is it from external achievements and comparisons, or is it from recognizing our inherent worth and practicing forgiveness?
Yeah, that's the question to ponder.
We'll leave you with that. So what we've been talking about today is that freedom isn't necessarily about changing our external circumstances,
It's about changing our perception of those circumstances.
choosing to see the world through a lens of peace and forgiveness.
Right, and that allows us to access a much deeper level of freedom.
I